Hello, welcome. It is very good to be here. Thank you very much, particularly you on the front row. Very grateful for you pushing up there and doing it. So welcome to the Imminent Future of Food 2025. And while others might be looking at what they're striving to achieve and thinking about that at this time of year, we are going to be fathoming together what we're going to be putting in our mouths and those of others in years to come. And it should be pretty enlivening. I'm going to introduce your host tonight as well. So this morning I was thinking back to all the best foods talks about food that I've ever been to. And one of them, in fact, I think maybe the very best, started absolutely horribly. It was from A.A. Gill, the brilliant restaurant critic, reviewer, and writer, like really good writer. And he was speaking at the Royal Geographic Society. And he started off by asking everyone in the audience, about 400, 500 people in the audience, to take a look at the people sat next to them on either side, to the left and right. And then he instructed attendees to put their hands up if they were sat next to someone who they considered to be fat. It was horrifying. It was excruciating. Of course, thank goodness, nobody put their hand up. After that, the thing that was good is he did get everyone's attention as a provocative. They got people to think a little bit about our relationship with food, but he then went on to speak very beautifully about food and cooking's importance as the very earliest form of culture, how it structures our society and how it shapes our own experience. He would say that before music, before art, there was cooking and sharing of food, and the whole piece was a love letter to the pleasures of the plate. Tonight, we're going to have similar provocation and inspiration without the awkward horror. And from the studio chefs and strategists who have authored this report, and in a moment I will be introducing you to the very brilliant creative strategy director, Kirsten. So creative strategist, Ralph. And Pablo, who's here? Who's the lead chef at Bompas Parr? And they're going to take your minds and your palates into the future tonight. So, before we do that, putting a show like this together takes a lot of people. There's a lot of people to thank. And I want to start off by thanking the team here from the venue, who are at the back there. Give a round of applause to them as well. And explain a little bit about why we're here. So we're at the Mills Fabrica. It is in London and Hong Kong. It's a global platform. And they spend their time supporting and investing people working on agri-food innovations and textile. And also, that's of tech style. And also how they all cross over and interrelate with one another. And how all of that has a sustainable impact as well. And so what that means is you're sitting in the very building where those businesses that are going to shape the way that we eat for years to come are doing that even now. It's happening all around us, or has been certainly today before people wrapped up. And they've got an exhibition that's launching on the 10th of February about, it's called The Taste of Tomorrow, What the World Will Be Eating in 2050. And so come back, it's up for the next 6 months after that. You should definitely come. It's going to be really good. Now, favourite question, inspired by Mr. Rin. Who likes booze? Yay! Great, so that's a good start. Good start to January. So drinks tonight are from Yealand's Wines, and that comes from the Aotearoa Valley in New Zealand. And it's one of the most sustainable wineries in the world. And if it were just a tiny visiting exercise, imagine you're amongst the grapes, and there are butterflies, and there are bees. There are other things flying around, and that's where your wine comes from. If you're drinking wine, it's really good. Hopefully it tastes even more delicious now than it already did. There's also a big thank you to Toast Brewing. They're a craft beer firm from London. They make all the beer with surplus bread. I think there might be a way as well that you can get, if you like the beer, we can get you discounts on the beer so you can drink even more of the really good beer. So we'll share some discount codes as well. It's really good. And then also later on, you are going to have science fiction made reality in the form of Kera protein. I'm not going to tell you what that is yet because it's a really good story. And Kirsten and Ralph are going to get into it in detail. The founders of Kera are here tonight as well, so ask to be introduced if you're interested. It really is genius. It could be what we're all eating. Well, actually in 2050, it's a good one for the show. And then also thank you to Meet Up Video as well, who are here and documenting everything. And then finally, thank you to all of you who are here in the room, everyone who's gathered online. I was surveying the guest list as I put it together. There are so many futurists, strategists, people who are making the decisions about how we eat and drink together. The people sat next to you, you've now had a look at them. They are fascinating. Please make an effort to talk to them later and discover what their opinions are. And I really wanted to also invite us at the end of this. We're going to be inviting questions. There's a lot, that's both for online and in the room here as well. And please be thinking of the best questions, the most challenging, well, not always the most challenging, the best questions. And the Kirsten and Ralph will be evaluating what they believe to be the best question, and you can win big. So not only will you get maybe behind Rob, will hold out up at the back of the room, there's a vinyl, which is Shortcuts to Emotion. It's woo! And I've got here another thing. This is very rare. It's taken us a year to make. And this is, in this bag, there are crystals made out of crystallized human tears. They're not totally safe to eat, but you can dazzle your friends as you sprinkle them on your food. They're made last year, Cry January, getting people out and about in hospitality. So yeah, think of your questions. You can win. Finally, thanks to all at Bompas Parr. It is lovely to see you. It's lovely to work with you every day. It's an amazing way to start the new year doing this together. I was going to shout a few names. Mimi, who's at the back. Big chiff, Mimi. Thanks for leading the production. Spear's got the camera around her neck as well. It's letting everyone know about this. So we all get excited about it. And then I want to do a very, very, very big special thank you to Lydia. Now, Lydia we've worked with for, she's not in the room. Where is she? Let's get Lydia. Oh God! Well, she's doing. Here we go. This is typical. Lydia doing all the hard work and all the cooking. We've worked with Lydia for over 5 years. Lydia is absolutely remarkable. This is the last event we get to do together. Lydia's going on to go to the Institute of Making, which is really phenomenal. If you're interested in materials, they've got materials library, and Lydia's going to be masterminding all of their events, which are already awesome, and they're going to get even more awesome. On Lydia's first day, she brought her packet of tomato-flavoured crisp collection into the studio and items she had made out of human hair. And it's been amazing working every day. So thank you, Lydia. It's amazing working with you. Big round of applause to Lydia for being absolutely brilliant. And can't wait to come to your shows in the future as well. Yeah, that's it. Let's get this started. Thank you so much. And over to Kirsten and Ralph. And Pablo.
I'll get up soon. Yeah.
Thanks, Sam, and good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for an exploration into some of our areas of thought and discovery over the past year. Now, this is the first time that some of you will be joining us for this type of presentation, so it's worth first setting out how we approach our reports, as it might be a little bit different from what you normally expect. So sometimes provocative, always inspiring, the future of food and drink is cut directly from the heart of what we do at the Bompas Parr studio every day. Building on 17 years of experience across a wide range of sectors, we combine and crystallise the outlooks of architects, development chefs, scientists, designers, creatives, strategists, researchers and makers, meaning that we don't copy and paste, we actively interrogate. And while standard industry trend reports might have more quantitative data and pull from more focus groups, more often the trends they identify are over by the time the report is published. So to steer clear of this, our future of food and drink intends to inspire as much as predict. We intend to initiate change as much as we tend to report on it. And this reflects the approach that drives the Bompas Parr's strategy more generally. It's one that attracts commercial partners, government agencies, and artistic collaborators, and it leverages the studio's capacity to consider and develop nascent ideas before they have already reached critical mass.
So we'll start with some reflections on last year and explore what we see as the key drivers shaping our collective future. We'll unpack 6 predictions for what this means in food and drink, and as Sam said, we'll end with time for Q&A, so please do be bubbling that up in your brains now. For those watching online, hello. You can send your questions in via the chat function, which is being monitored by a member of the team here, the wonderful Jacob at the back. There will be a few tastings tonight as part of our presentation that have been created by our brilliant development chef, Pablo. We've already cheered for, but we'll get plenty more cheers later, I'm sure. We'll also be posting allergens on the screen as we do those tastings, but if you have any particular information, we have a full list of allergens and ingredients at the back. So without further ado, let's jump into the future with a quick reflection on the past year.
So 2024 began full of promise. Surely, finally, this was going to be the year that the new world and all the infinite possibilities we've been speaking about for the past 5 years were finally going to take root and materialize. And then, we really don't need us to remind you that our world feels more chaotic than ever. A literal fever dream marked by the anxious tension between sensory overload and understimulation, underlined by the evergreen need for agency in the face of uncertainty and crisis. So as a studio, we really see it as our role to be optimistic about the future of food and drink, in full understanding and appreciation of the challenges that we face. We therefore believe that although these times are marked by chaos and the darkness of the unknown, that this is not necessarily a time that we need to fear, because these are also days of change, and uncertainty can in fact be very productive. Because it's at times like these that you have to get imaginative. You have to go beyond what's expected, well beyond.
So in last year's report, we explored the intersection between 2 realities of food. Food as immense joy and food as immense challenge. And observing the rise of systems thinking in our food systems, we unpacked ideas such as synthetic enchantment, water archaeology, and hyperbolic drinks. Since then, we've continued to absorb information from our audaciously expanded field, the latest scientific discoveries, design innovations, technological advancements, shifts in the creative industry, and changing human desire, to name but a few. We've looked at the big issues in the eye with a trademark irreverence and sense of humour, challenging ourselves to hold paradox in new ways as we question what's happening in the world and why, most importantly, and what in turn this means for the future of food and drink. But first, it's always worth understanding the wider context everything plays into, so we can really get into the heart of the driving why. Starting with the big macro driver that simply cannot be ignored, that Kirsten's going to take us through now.
So to date, the defining narrative of civilization and the conception of progress has been one of human betterment through control and domination over the world, over society, the forces of nature, and the wildness inside us human beings that would disrupt civilization and progress. Or as 17th century philosopher René Descartes puts it, to render ourselves lords and possessors. And while this narrative successfully carried civilization through immense progress to where we are today, there's no escaping the fact that it's no longer animating our society as it once did. Just consider this. Our global food systems remain as fragile as ever. The 2024 State of Soils in Europe report laid bare alarming trends of soil degradation in the EU. Farmers in Britain have been taking to the streets to protest and highlight the impossible future that they now face. And computation has evolved into something so persuasive and seductive that people are starting to think more and more like the machines, or perhaps we're no longer thinking at all. As a result, creativity is suffering. Budgets are being cut, algorithms have us stuck in echo chambers of inspiration, and redundancies are happening worldwide, with creative fatigue being felt on a global scale as we perpetually try to keep up and react. So over the next decade, the structures of our inner and outer world that are the most rigid and traditionally held as the standard or the norm will be tried, tested, and in the end completely reconfigured as we go beyond what has been narrated to us as reality today. In short, we're preparing for a complete systems update. And this isn't just optimistic thinking on our side. We can clearly see this new future starting to emerge through our 3 micro drivers. Starting with a very welcome collective FU. So 300 years ago, a small group of underappreciated, mostly young professionals had finally had enough of living in a society run badly by a self-interested and self-serving establishment. Disruption was the constant backdrop to their lives as they faced ongoing uncertainty and mass redundancy. The rules of the day favoured an elite few, And for the majority of people, life was unclear, unfair, and unfulfilling, which sounds shockingly familiar. Now, this was the reality of who we know today as the Pirates. And as a studio, we're really big fans, because the Pirates decided to do something about it. They decided to break the rules and then remake them. They didn't just reject society, they reinvented it. So since then, this renegade energy has resurfaced in a myriad of ways that spans the personal to the political, with subcultures, creative collectives, and citizens harnessing it to create acid house, abstract expressionism, and call out social inequality on the world stage. And most recently, we've observed its return through the revival of rave culture, mosh pits, a collective backturn to living life perfectly so that we can embrace it fully, and several of London's cultural institutions set to celebrate boundary-pushing subcultures in 2025. And we see this rebellious attitude and high-octane energy continuing to grow, inevitably moving out of the zeitgeist and into mainstream consciousness as it translates into what and how we will be eating and drinking in the near future.
So our next microdriver is what we're calling the year of quantum everything. So 100 years since the initial development of quantum mechanics, the United Nations has actually proclaimed 2025 as the International Year of Quantum Science and Technology. This year-long worldwide initiative will be observed through activities at all levels aimed to increase public awareness of the importance of quantum science and its applications. Quantum physics is one of the most fascinating, confusing, and downright terrifying areas of science because it gets right down to the very nature and fabric of what reality truly fundamentally is. As was seen in the work that won the 2022 Nobel Prize in Physics, when scientists go down to the subatomic level, the rules of reality as we understand it, through traditional kind of time and space dimensions, no longer apply. There's no such thing as an objectively existing world, no world out there apart from our observation of it. In fact, according to quantum theory, we are inside the very universe that we're trying to understand. It's important to try and understand this as it renders our inner attitudes, thoughts, beliefs, and assumptions about our food systems, as well as how we consume and experience food and drink, to be merely subjective states of mind.
And then finally, for our third driver, the new age of romanticism. So convenience and algorithms are making our lives duller. It's dulling our senses, the way we experience the world, and even the way we create beauty. Even just 10, 15, or 20 years ago, when the world was less connected, individuality and creativity really stood out. Today, everybody has access to the same influences, and our decisions are governed by a rising dominance of data and technology. And this is making it much harder to stand apart, whether that's as an individual, a business, a brand, a place, a product, or an experience. And as a result, these past few months have been peppered and then fully shaken with an outcry for the return of true creativity. So the Romantics emphasised the importance of imagination, moving away from a period that was all about reason and knowledge. And Bompas Parr believes that we're on the cusp of a new age of romanticism, moving away from convenience and data in order to return to a truly creative way of being, and therefore eating and drinking. So this year, we're treading the liminal thresholds of the subjective and the social, from the quantum to the romantically sublime. We'll be looking inwards to the complex workings of the body, and outward to wider food systems that we hold in place, looking at food and drink through a critically creative lens. So our 6 insights will focus on shocking dinners, eating the inedible, quantum possibilities, strangescaping, the flavours of memory, and savour mentality. Now, these themes connect with each other and overlap in places, and we invite you to see these predictions not as trends, for trends by their very nature are impermanent and things don't magically disappear from one year to the next, but instead we invite you to see them as contours that will help us collectively map the future. So now I'll hand you over to Ralph to take us through our first prediction.
So, our first prediction, shocking dinners. The act of eating is inherently violent, flesh rendered from bone and stem before being crushed between teeth, masticated to a pulp and sent into an acidic abyss of the stomach. Even the act of drinking alcohol is a practice in toxic ingestion. Sorry to say that to everyone drinking. And removal, there you go. There is simply no escaping the nature of consumption as a shockingly inseparable act to destruction. So this trend focuses on dining experiences that elicit strong feelings and emotions that we would not normally expect, such as arousal, shock, horror, and pain, and how they influence taste and flavor. It explores how different receptors being triggered might influence taste and the effect that triggers such as anticipation, fear, revulsion, and even seduction might have on the final gastronomic experience. Don't worry, it's not getting weird. In today's world, we're sick to our stomachs of the saccharine vanilla of prim dining experiences. Guests are looking to be shocked, scared even, in order to feel something, to leave a meal feeling as though an experience has been had rather than a mere perfunctory pabulum. This is where shocking dinners comes in. Pause. Need I say more? Next slide. It's important to first define what we mean as shock, as you've all just experienced. From arousal to discomfort, repulsion, or the tension between pleasure and pain, shock can take many forms, heightening emotions that are often expressed physically through sensations such as salivation, sweat, and tumescence at the more excitable end of the spectrum. As humans, we've had a long-standing fascination with shock that has ebbed and flowed in varying degrees through time. And today, we're seeing this fascination ooze back in as horror films return their gaze to the body grotesque. Think of The Substance, which received 5 nominations for the 82nd Golden Globe Awards, and Sarah Kane's final masterpiece, 448 Psychosis, which returns to the stage to plunge its audience into a psyche teetering on the edge of oblivion. Shock is also rising as creative inspiration within gastronomic experiences. So a good example is the work of Brazilian chef and artist Kai K. Tizi, who recently created a 3-hour performative dinner for Young Boy Dancing Group, which left no taboos out in order to capture the subtlest tendencies, emotions, and dynamics. In science, the idea that pain may serve to produce pleasurable tastes has been noted by theorists for years, and more recently substantiated by empirical findings. One 2014 study, whose full title is Gustatory Pleasure and Pain, the offset of acute physical pain enhances responsiveness to taste, snappy, explored the possibility that beyond producing positive hedonistic states, the offset of pain may actually serve to enhance the capacity for gustatory pleasure. They found that cold press of pain, which is where you put your arm in a kind of cold tank of water, enhances the enjoyment of pleasant tastes, for example. That pain increases intensity and sensitivity to a range of tastes and flavors that are really wide, and that pain increases sensitivity to gustatory stimuli. I'm going to say gustatory a lot. To understand this phenomenon, we must first look to the mouth, the gateway to the stomach, and the initial passage through which food enters the body. This is where oral somatosensory awareness occurs, the somatic sensations that arise in the mouth that provide important information to the brain about objects within the mouth and to the structure of the oral tissue itself. Due to the powerful innervation of nerves within the oral tissue, the mouth is where we experience some of the most vivid and intense bodily experiences. When we get to the stomach, there are various proverbs and sort of sayings around having gut feelings, being able to stomach something, or having eyes bigger than one's stomach. That's not surprising, since the gut and mind are actually linked both physically and biochemically via the gut-brain axis, which is primarily through the vagus nerve, which I learned was here during my research. So we predict a rise in the exploration of somatically shocking experiences, with restaurants and dining establishments playing with conceptually unusual elements that strive to disrupt the dining experience and go from plate to perception, pleasure to pain. We envision food that's made to send shivers down the spine, meals paired with scary films to make for a truly shocking experience, visually frightening food that generates fear and revulsion to spur that excitement, hunger becoming desire as guests indulge in meals that look utterly horrific but taste heavenly. Imagine a Michelin star diner set out in a dark basement where guests are asked to sit on electric chairs that gently zap and prick to provide a frisson of excitement every time a guest takes a bite. Not much better. Or maybe we'll start to see guests being provided with a heart-racing experience that gets blood and adrenaline pumping before digging into a fabulous feast. So, I'm now going to pass over to Pablo, who's going to take us through our first tasting of this evening, which is our trigeminal pastils. There is a microphone here for you. It does. Should do, yeah.
Hello. Hello. Here they come. So, I don't think these are as scary or as shocking as Ralph was just making out, so don't be afraid to eat it. But there is a bit of a sensual journey in there, and I guess the aim was to try and kind of activate that trigeminal nerve, which is working on things like salivation and your sense of heat or your sense of cool. So there's a few different compounds that that work. So it's like spilanthol, which comes from Szechuan peppers, or chili, capsaicin comes from chili, and then also menthol. There's no menthol in this, so it's a bit of it's something that the chefs of Szechuan have known for centuries, I think. And what is happening essentially is that you're getting sort of competing signals. So you're getting stimulation, but the cooling and the heating are kind of, in a way, cancelling each other out, hopefully anyway. But yeah, just give the whole thing a good old chew, eat it up, and enjoy the ride. It's not, like I said, it's not too bad. It's nothing too scary. Yeah. You will feel a kind of tingling afterwards. There's a relative of Szechuan in there. It's called buzz button. It's a flower from the Amazon, and it has quite a long-lasting tingling sensation. It will go away, so I wouldn't worry about it too much. Yeah.
We also do have some order somewhere if people need it. But it passes. Enjoy the ride.
And it'll increase your enjoyment of the food anyway. The food that is to come. Take leave.
Great. So, enjoying that? How are you feeling? Good? Being able to breathe again a little bit? Yeah? I know, we've sampled these at the office. They are, yeah, I know what you're going through, and it's fun. And it will go away. So our second trend is eating the inedible. So we live in a world where sustainability, closed-loop circularity, and regeneration are of the utmost importance in order to work towards positively transforming our food systems and saving our planet. Is it time we started looking to create food from the previously assumed inedible? We've already explored geophagy, the art of eating dirt, previously, so what else can we look to for new sources of vitamins and minerals? What can quantum theory unlock for us in the way of entirely new possibilities? So this is a quote from Liv Sim, who's a student at Central St Martin's in biodesign, who says that if the world's food sources were a menu, it's time to update the taxonomy of the inedible, edible, and the transition between these categories. As our understanding of edibility evolves, we must develop a more nuanced and flexible framework that accounts for technological advancements, changing environmental conditions, and emerging dietary needs. So Liv, as I said, is a Central St Martin's biodesign student. She recently explored the idea of eating wasted pure copper from e-waste. So in total, the UK generates around 6 million tons of e-waste every year. And through a bio-leaching process, Sim's bacteria assistants extract and purify the pure copper from e-waste, as well as clean them enough to return them to the human body and nature. So copper is actually one of the essential minerals the human body needs, and Sim developed a sweet made from the copper that benefits our body as a supplement. Inspired by the work of award-winning artist and PhD quantum physicist Libby Heaney, which explores life in the parallel realities and how slime is an engaging substance between all forms, we see a future where slime moves onto our, slides onto our plates. I don't know what the description is for slime. Infused with all the nutrients we need, potentially without the need to consume physical matter at all. So what does this mean for the future of food and drink? Well, expect to see menus of poisonous cocktails and poisonous aperitifs deriving from once assumed poisonous inedible plants, with scientists finding new ways to extract the edible and make them safe for human consumption. This could open a whole new world of flavor for us, and we predict food factories being set up adjacent to e-waste landfills, for example, in order to harvest the likes of copper and infuse it into takeaway lunches for e-waste workers. If you really want to test your perception of reality, consider this. Humanity will soon be in a post-virtual world, and with it, we'll have the ability to decouple our sensory human desire from the physical inputs traditionally required to fulfill them. As Professor of Innovation Robert Walcott puts forward in his book, Foresight, this means in the future we'll be able to not have our cakes and eat them too. I'll leave you to cogitate that for a moment. At a hyper-local level, the very building we are in today is itself a fantastic example of innovation at the forefront of food and drink futures, as Sam noted at the beginning. So a number of Mills Fabrica supported innovators are working to utilize byproducts that would normally be simply discarded, bringing new life to otherwise inedible waste. Novo Nutrients, for example, their fermentation platform is powered by microbes and proprietary bioreactors utilizing organisms that transform CO2 emissions into food, along with hydrogen and oxygen, and that transforms into this single-cell protein ingredient for food and feed that is really dense in nutrients. Which takes us to our next taster. So our second taste tonight is from the winner of Mills Fabrica Textile Prize 2020. I'm going to pass over to Pablo to talk a little bit about that, these guys, but it is chicken feather protein. And if you guys can give us a little wave, the guys from Curry Protein are here today. Yeah. And the allergens, if people can't see it, are sesame, soy, gluten, and mustard. So sesame, soy, gluten, and mustard. Yeah, it might still be tingly. This will take it away.
Rian's gotten into it. He's already swallowed it. You better give Rian another one. Yeah, so without kind of... I think Ralph has kind of covered the pretext for this, which is that, we really have to change our understanding of, what is edible and what is not. And I think our ancestors were doing that in the past as well, with any kind of evolution of cuisine, whether it was pickling herring or smoking meats or burying things in the ground. These were all innovations that were kind of born from necessity. And I think that we're sort of really standing at the doorstep of a... I'm going to let... Everyone's having a bit of a chat.
It happens.
Enjoy the chicken. It's good.
Chicken.
No, but we are, without beating the drum too much, I think we are standing at the kind of the brink of having to make some, really potentially what we see as kind of, drastic choices about the things that we eat. But I think what Kera have done, which we are really, fascinated by and really impressed by, is that, they've taken something that we already eat and then they've taken a part of it that would be considered absolutely inedible, and they've maximised the output. And, this isn't just maximising the protein yield, it's maximising the carbon fuels that are used to produce this meat in the first place. So it's sort of, it's quite a layered thing. But at first glance, it might be like, well, I don't want to eat feathers. But, as you've all just tried, they're not too bad. You can make it work. But, these guys know a lot more about it than I do. So I'd really encourage you to go and speak to them afterwards and get the full rundown on their philosophy and also their process as well, because it's really fascinating. Yeah.
Also worth noting that poultry waste-burning plants actually produce more pollution per unit of energy than new coal plants. So this is something that's really important to look at now in terms of how we explore and examine these kind of inedible things and what we can do with them.
And then on to our third prediction, quantum possibilities, which in true Bompas Parr style, we've added our own twist to. So since 2021, there's been a marked increase in the interest for paganism, with 95,000 people in the UK census describing themselves as believers in paganism, Wicca, or shamanism, which is a substantial incline from the last 2 decades census results, with the number sat at 70,000 in 2011 and just 42,000 in 2001. Now, when we combine this with the rise in approaches to eating that have the least impact on the environment, such as the climatarian diet or the regenivores who eat centering products from regenerative agriculture, there's a clear increase in interest for belief systems and food philosophies that are rooted in care and reverence for nature. Now, these aren't just systems and philosophies that traverse food, nature, myth, and humanity. Science is now proving that understanding of an interconnected world to be true. So the scientists who won the Nobel Prize for Physics proved that quantum entanglement is not just a theory, but the very mechanics that our world is built from. Now, most of us are still trying to understand what this actually means, but in trying to put it simply, they were able to show that 2 quantum particles could communicate with each other no matter how far apart they were. So this means that you could put one particle on the sun and one here on Earth, and there would be no 9-minute delay as there is with light. Instead, these particles, which by the way are the very particles that everything, I really mean that, in the universe is made up from, and that includes you and I and the food and drink that we consume. And basically, one on the sun, one on the moon, the Earth, they can still instantly communicate with each other because they're interconnected beyond time and space. And when we also consider findings such as the infamous phantom leaf experiment of the 70s, which used Killian photography to show that when we cut the physical body of a leaf, its energetic body, in fact, still remains intact, certain philosophical questions begin to be raised about the absorption of energy in our food systems. So items of food and drink get broken down in our bodies and are integrated to become a part of the molecules and tissues within us, a form of transubstantiation occurring through digestion. And what's also interesting to note here is that while these scientific experiments open up a whole new way of looking at life, they also perfectly align with the beliefs of our ancestors, such as the Irish mythology that predates Christianity, or the understanding of the known universe as taught through the Andean shamanic traditions that are over 20,000 years old. So in Irish mythology, the other world is a parallel universe. It's a mirror that exists right alongside the local reality that you and I experience right now. Time doesn't exist in the other world. In the other world, knowledge is infinite, as is artistic inspiration, food, and possibility. Now, according to Irish mythology, the first thing to ever come into creation was a hazel tree, and its branches contained all the knowledge of the universe. This hazel tree flourished over the well of wisdom within which lived a great speckled salmon. So the story goes that the salmon ate the hazelnuts, which on one occasion fell into the well, thus acquiring all the wisdom of the universe and absorbing all the knowledge of the other world into its body. It was then foretold that whoever could catch and eat the salmon would gain its wisdom instantly. And then if we look to Peru, in the Andean shamanic traditions, everything is energy and everything is interconnected. Our thinking minds are programs run by our brains, with our bodies holding true wisdom and knowledge, while simultaneously acting as the physical representations of our life experiences to date. So as a master healer and thought leader, Anna Hunt spoke to an enthralled audience of scientists and medical leaders last year, showing how the beliefs we hold about our local reality significantly alter both our external and internal experience of life. In her illuminating keynote, Hunt used science to illustrate the power that deeply felt intention has over our physical bodies, from the way that we heal from medical procedures and recover from illness, to the way that our bodies react when we consume food and drink. For example, this means that the act of drinking alcohol with friends, when we're truly connected and experiencing joy, has an entirely different impact on the body at a cellular level to drinking exactly the same with a totally different intention. Now, when it comes to what this actually means for our kitchens and dining experiences, we believe we're on the dawn of a new type of renaissance, where soul meets science to create quantum food and drink futures. We'll see development chefs and master blenders working together with quantum physicists and thought leaders in mythology, and together they'll imagine and create new eating experiences, developing new form of edibles and liquids that quantum collapse the mind's programming to tap into the knowledge of parallel realities and our 13 billion year old universe, which we appreciate seems very big and scary and very far away. So more imminently, perhaps we'll start to see new rituals set tableside for diners to tap into the divinity of nature, holding reverence for the food that they're about to consume and synchronizing with the energy present in the meal before tucking in. Maybe this will translate to the home, with dinner party guests entering a sanctum of savor that aims to enhance the eating and drinking experience through spiritual offering or collective intention. And instead of raw water or functional waters enhanced with nootropics, perhaps we'll see regionally ritualized water from sacred sources that imbue us with a deeper connection to the very life force that sustains us. Now, when we're talking of tableside rituals, it's also important to consider what the future artifacts of those tables will be. Which brings us onto our fourth prediction, strangescaping. We spend so much time dissecting the contents of our dinners, yet the paraphernalia that surrounds a dinner is often overlooked. In 2020, we explored extreme tablescaping, and since then, this has continued to rise in popularity, which got us wondering, what's next? In their book, Multisensory Flavor Perception, From Fundamental Neuroscience Through to Marketplace, authors Charles Spence and Bettina Piqueras-Fisman highlight the importance of oral somatosensory attributes of food and drink in our enjoyment and perception of them. And what their findings essentially uncover is that beyond the multisensory textural properties of the food itself, the external elements, such as cutlery and crockery, can also influence the experience we have when dining. So in 2024, Surrealism turned 100, and exhibitions around the world celebrated that art movement. And one of its most iconic stalwarts, Salvador Dali, was just as obsessed with food as us, with the way featuring prominently in his work and also inspiring his infamous dinner parties. Now, what's fascinating here is how Dali found that although his parties were spectacular, surrealist spectacles, the dinner was never quite as wonderful as the conversation. So much so that he dedicated an entire chapter to these discussions in his book, Le Dîner de Gala. So as we stare down the barrel of a full system reset, how can we use the purpose of tables, plates, cutlery, and even napkins to better drive storytelling that inspires the creativity and imagination that we so desperately need and crave right now? So in the 13th century, the silver tree of Karakum was erected during the Mongol Empire, the grandson of Genghis Khan and his guests. Not only was this a clearly very impressive structure, but it was also a drinking fountain which overflowed with various alcoholic drinks. Crowned by a trumpet-wielding angel, the main structure formed a magnificent silver tree, wrapped in silver serpents and complete with branches, leaves, and fruit. At its root sat 4 lions of silver, each with a conduit through it, and all belching forth white milk of mares. Up in the branches, 4 pipes emerged to splash a different alcoholic beverage down to silver basins waiting below. Now this beautiful, albeit extremely extravagant structure had one sole purpose, and that was to deliver drinks to Khan and his guests. Essentially, it's a free bar. So Bompas Parr believes that we can borrow references like this to generate our own extravagant drinking fountains. So imagine the water fountain at your local swimming pool becoming a structural wonder, which tells the stories of the local area, or the coffee dispenser at work being created in collaboration with a famous architect to add creative sustenance to every coffee moment. Perhaps physical bars will transform altogether into spectacles of wonder that deliver drinks to guests in strange and unexpected ways, maybe even moving past the physical to serve levitating liquids in figurative voids so that guests can experience the purest tasting known to man. So in recent years, we've seen the likes of adrenaline go beyond the plate with moving tables that transport guests quite literally on a ride through the different dinner courses. And we've also seen Valbost create a gravity-defying table for Ashi Studio. So in the future, we see table design briefs moving beyond function into experience, which raises the questions. Do we even need to sit at tables? Are tables made from different textures that enhance the eating experience? And could tables stretch between different locations? Then we take a look at what actually sits on the table. So in 16th century Italy, napkins were once used to generate elaborate table displays called triumphs. They depicted real or mythical animals, natural elements such as trees, and architectural shapes that resembled castles or fountains. Today's humble napkin is often left to a simple fold in restaurants, but draws parallels with these displays in that they have become bearers of inspiring ideas. In fact, the idea for the world's most successful budget airline came about in 1966, when Roland King, owner of a small Texas commuter carrier, was pitching his plan for a new low-cost service to his lawyer, Herb Keller. He drew the perspective route between Dallas, Houston, and San Antonio on a napkin, and then the following year, the pair launched Southwest Airlines. So we believe that the time has come for the humble napkin to be turned into a vector for innovation. It deserves to be taken more seriously and to have pride on tabletops, given the possibilities that can clearly come out of it. And then when it comes to the rest of the dining experience, we foresee a future where the paraphernalia that surrounds a dinner is shaped with extra sensorial stimulus that generates new ideas and experiences.
So our next trend is the flavors of memory. So our experiences of the world are formed through sensory inputs, none more so than our sense of taste. Food brings us sustenance and joy, enables connectivity and social cohesion, and produces energy that physically changes us and grounds us to our mortality as we learn to listen to the wants and needs of our body. Consider how when we return from a holiday, the things we most often share with friends and family are details about the food we ate, the local cuisine, all the sort of drinks and cocktails. Our memories are really intrinsically linked to the sensory inputs that surround us, and none more so than that which we ingest. In the world of neuroscience, there are many key theories as to how the brain works, with emerging research looking at the brain as being adaptive. So this theoretical framework posits the brain responding to stress and changing internal and external environments in a way that demonstrates changes in relative activity levels of different cerebral networks that are always active in some way, rather than the brain simply responding to a stimulus passively. The brain instead makes rapid predictions of internal and external needs and adapts accordingly, forging connections and reactions that rely on several areas of the brain rather than pure kind of reptilian response. And when it comes to how memory works, a number of studies have found a key characteristic between odor memory that shows a high resistance to interference, with evolutionary changes to the olfactory bulb and the main olfactory system following birth as playing a key role in our recall and association of food and drink. Certain olfactory cues in mammals play an important role in social cohesion and bonding. With maternal breast milk, for example, the odors are individually distinctive to the infant in order to provide recognition between mother and offspring. Taste is a horrific image. Taste in particular has a strong connection to memory due in large part to the strength of scent, with the olfactory bulb closely linked to two important brain areas, the amygdala and the hippocampus, responsible for emotion and memory respectively. And the coaction of these two areas in the brain forms the basis of creating food memories. Furthermore, the sensory input captured by the tongue provides an intriguing look into how and why our sense of taste develops. And now, sort of summarily, the tongue receives sensory information via papillae on the surface, which then translates into the interaction into a chemical message about what's in the mouth: hot, cold, hard, soft, slimy, etc. This information is then relayed to the brain to be understood via a series of complex nerve structures, the innervation of which is a complex, but essentially it relies on three main nerves, with the brain stem acting as a sort of sorting room for extra sensory modalities so they can be processed in the correct way. Our exploration of the world as infants actually primarily happens through taste and touch, which is why visual representations of sensory homunculus, which is what you're seeing here on the screen, are shown with really overly large hands and mouths. So for those who haven't seen a sensory homunculus before, the areas that are enlarged are where humans most use, or the sort of senses that we most use. And other things. It's ultimately due to this that sensory memory exists, with less desirable tastes and feelings processed as such. You know, sand and dirt when we're young equals not tasty, so therefore that is stored and retrieved in adulthood for later. This is also where the really surprising phenomenon of mouthfeel memory comes from, with our tongue knowing exactly what things would feel like when licked without the need to lick them, whether that be a computer screen, concrete wall, or polystyrene. So even when you think you don't know what something tastes or feels like, your tongue certainly does. It's really strange, but you can look at the carpet, chair, whatever, and your tongue can tell you what that feels like. It's really trippy. We believe that food and drink experience of the future will tap into this intriguing world of nerve stimulation and reception, exploring dining experiences that rely only on having a menu described to you to stimulate mouthfeel memory, or asking guests to describe a memory for a chef to recreate in a Proustian feast for the senses. And understanding what the science of nerve arousal can do for the impact of taste, we foresee a rise in dining experiences that tap into mouthfeel stimulation through a balance of different temperatures, textures, and Scoville scaling. So imagine a meal where diners are asked to dip into a roulette-style table of ingredients that stimulate different nerves and perceptions to completely change the response a food item has when it hits the tongue. Maybe we'll even see at-home sort of memory meal kits that are prepared to respond to memories submitted to recreate a particular summer on the coast, or feelings of eating blades of grass and handfuls of dirt as a toddler exploring the world for the first time. And this is where our final tasting of the evening, which has allergens of gluten, for those who can't see, comes in. It is our ceremonial rock licking, which Pablo will now take us through. And I'm going to leave a bit more time to do this one because it requires a bit of engagement.
Well, I think so, yeah. Could everyone take your rock, but then wait for everyone else, because we want to bring in a bit of a sort of a collective ritual moment here. It's a twofold tasting, yeah. Yes. Vegan, in fact. I think, yeah. It's vegan. Should I just let everyone talk?
You can talk about the porridge.
I'll let them sit down and get their attention back.
Yeah. Bit of a rabble to crown it.
How are we going? Has everyone got their rock? Not yet. So there are a couple of ideas behind this. Rolf's done a really amazing job of sort of explaining a few of these ideas that have gone into this. But one of them is that idea of learning about the world through putting things in your mouth, the oral development phase, and that's why I want everyone to do it together, because it's quite a disarming thing to to do together. And I think that there is something inherently memorable about eating with people at a table, and even more so when that act is maybe a little bit disgusting or a little bit unusual. So if we all lick rocks together, there's something kind of communally bonding about that. And then what is actually on the rock in this case is sort of goes back and talks about some of the other, trends that we were hitting on. But it's basically about when people started to be able to cook with fire. I've been, reading up on Paleolithic cooking, and one of the first things that people were able to do when they had fire was cook things like barley. So this is a porridge made out of barley and water pepper and a few other things. I tried to make it a bit more palatable for the 21st century, but yeah, it's my approximation of something that people in the Paleolithic era might have eaten together because of fire. So, if you all have your rocks, bottoms up.
Can I use it? Yeah, a little bit.
Sorry about that. It's all right. Really get your tongue in there. It needs to. You can just give you a rock. These were hand-foraged rocks. I was out there. Pablo, where's your rock? Do you guys need a rock? Yeah, we
I mean, I'll be pleased I give you one.
Yeah, I need a rock. This is, So you should be feeling that sense of like childlike joy, and sort of it really taps into that idea of kind of licking things that maybe shouldn't be licked, textures, lots of different flavors, and sort of things that are just unusual in the mouth, especially with the kind of way that we've cooked this. Alex.
I personally can't even have it.
I can't.
Bottoms up.
Cannot eat it. Violently ill. Please don't give it to me.
Oh, rock man.
Maybe I'm a bad child with lots of rocks, basically.
Well. All right.
Got some sediment in your
Oh. Oh.
I think that was my hint to move on.
We're just getting a question online for how your rocks tasted. I don't know. Would someone like to give a description of what they experienced?
Tasted like nothing, apparently. Come on, guys. Smoky. Okay.
Lots of umami.
Umami.
Lots of shame.
Shame.
So far we've got smoky, umami, and shame for those online, because I'm mic'd up, so hopefully you can hear me. Anything else to throw into the mix?
Peppery.
Peppery.
Yeah, well done.
Mineral.
Peppery, mineral shame.
Yeah.
To me, it smelled oceanic, but it tasted earthy. So I think that was maybe a.
Smelt oceanic, but tasted
I think
earthy.
I was thinking of pebbles at the beach. Then. So,
I think, it's pretty good.
Happy with that?
Oh, good.
Pablo, you happy with that? I think as a summary, that sounds pretty good.
Yeah. Oceanic earthy.
Shame in there.
Yeah.
That'll go on the packaging for the sales.
So then our last prediction explores the potential of savouring to be the new mindfulness when it comes to the gastronomic experience, looking at notions of savour-led time dilation, food-to-mouth transition, and switched-off eating experiences. And there are three main reasons that we believe this. So by now, most of us will have heard of mindful eating. But in the Western adaptation of mindful Buddhist practices, we've unknowingly removed most of its heart, instead often using them as a perceived silver bullet to enhance personal gain. And when we go back to consider our key drivers, what we actually crave and need right now is the total opposite. The second comes from a randomized clinical trial conducted in 2024 that elevated the efficacy of mindfulness-oriented recovery enhancement amongst past and present US military personnel who are struggling with chronic pain and PTSD. But what really ignited our imaginations here was how the study found that mindfulness-oriented recovery was superior to supportive psychotherapy only when it was combined with the therapeutic process of savouring food. Then our third exists in the early 1900s, where Horace Fletcher, a health reformer who thought people didn't chew their food nearly enough, decided to champion the art of slow eating. In fact, he once chewed an onion 722 times, and this became known as Fletcherism, the idea that you must essentially digest your food in the mouth before swallowing. So whilst the aim of Fletcherism was to aid healthy digestion, it did get us thinking. Sitting still to chew on an onion that many times can only have resulted in truly savouring a moment. One of a thought-provoking capacity, almost sending you into a daytime dreamland as the onion turns from crunchy bites into an oozing liquid. Now, eating food is something that people have always enjoyed, but we have lived in an era of convenience for the last decade, where we've been encouraged to live our lives as quick as possible, from last-minute Uber requests to meals delivered to our doors in 30 minutes from a whole host of restaurants. So the Romantics emphasised the importance of imagination, moving away from a period that was all about reason and knowledge. And as we shared earlier, Bompas Parr believes that we're on the cusp of a new age of Romanticism. And Romanticism in food production and consumption is all about celebrating the creation of food, finding intriguing stories, and not shying away from decadence. So a favourite artist of the studio, William Blake, once said, "The road of excess leads to the palace of wisdom. You never know what is enough until you know what is more than enough." And for food production and consumption, this means stepping away from convenience and extrapolating the senses that surround the food to push its possibilities, ultimately savouring it in every way imaginable. But instead of doing this for health benefits, this is about doing it for mouthfeel and a journey of the palate. It means indulgently dissecting whatever sits on a plate in front of you, establishing rituals around a simple plate of pasta to truly enjoy and romanticise every bite. It means dining with your food, taking every view of it before consuming it, as opposed to taking a quick photo to upload to social media before rushing off to meet friends or to get back to a meeting. So imagine a new era of solo dining, where diners sit opposite mirrors in order to really enjoy their food, viewing themselves eat every mouthful. I mean, after all, we're so used to seeing ourselves in Zoom multiple times a day. So why not eat in front of a mirror as you ritualise that plate of pasta? Or what if we got really intimate with our food by simply removing cutlery and considering the connection between the fingers and food items? In 1963, wrote in the bell jar that she observed a poet eating a salad with his fingers, leaf by leaf, making it seem to be the only natural and sensible thing to do. And Jose Pizarro, the acclaimed Spanish owner and founder of the Pizarro Group of restaurants, describes eating with his hands as the best way to eat. It's a visceral pleasure that's really hard to beat. It creates a sort of magical connection between you and the food. And that sounds like a perfectly romanticised way to savour your food to us. So through these insights, we've sought to excavate the foundations of what the futures of food and drink might be. We've explored surrealist tablescaping, trigeminal nerve triggering, quantum possibilities, and more. So thank you for joining us, and we hope you've enjoyed our presentation. So this is the type of thinking that really gets us excited in the studio. And if you'd like to hear more from us throughout the year, you can scan our QR code here to sign up to our newsletter. Apologies for the shameful plug. And we'd also like to take this opportunity again to thank our sponsors, Toast Ale, Kera Protein, Yealand's Wine, and of course, the wonderful and inspiring hosts, the Mills Fabrica. So we're now going to open up for questions. And a reminder, those of you at home, you can join us through the chat function. There you go.
So any questions? One straight off the bat, brilliant. Wait for the microphone, sir. First talk, is it?
That was really brilliant, really thought-provoking. Just on the section when you were talking about cutlery and the tables and using different, you had the image of things that look like shells and that sort of evolution. Do you think it's also going to be, were you also exploring the idea of the different materials interacting with, we talked about the mouth a lot and olfactory, sensory plant things. So was it about the materials as well and how they interact with your mouth? And like the idea of like, I don't know, gold being the most neutral material and doesn't interfere with the flavors that they're carrying? Or was it kind of going into that space? Because that's quite an interesting kind of space of the ideas of material interacting with the food.
Yeah. With that one, what we're really looking at is every element. And as you can tell, we tried to cover a lot in a very short space of time. So as you kind of pointed out, so much didn't make it in. So for us with Strangescaping, it really is taking kind of all of the factors, whether you say it's the materials, it's what things look like, it's how you can have those extra sensory stimulus to kind of really ignite creativity, and using that to kind of enhance the eating experience, but also to then really ignite that kind of creativity and that conversation. So taking the kind of extreme tablescaping, which is kind of quite aesthetic in its nature, albeit beautiful, and really kind of pushing it to the extremes to kind of every physical element possible. Anything you want to add?
Yeah, I think I just also want to add, it's also about the absence of things. I think we were talking about eating with our fingers and everything, but if you imagine turning up to a diner, a restaurant with nothing on the table, like there's just something very kind of visceral about just having the texture of a table. And this I think is a little bit Western. I think in some sort of Eastern cultures where it's very normal to sit on the floor and eat with your hands and those kind of things. So there's obviously the kind of cultural aspects to take on board, but yeah, the sort of the interplay between absence and presence of items is something that's really interesting to look at.
I loved all the trends. Super vivid, exciting view of the future. I was particularly curious about saver mentality, and especially from a drinks perspective. I think some of us in the room might have been there where we've been enjoying a drink and it's kind of gone too soon a little bit. Just curious on your thoughts of like how that might apply, particularly in a drinks context. I think we can chew an onion 722 times, but like if we've got a kind of single measure of spirits, how you can really push that through, because I think it's something drinks industry is definitely really looking for, how you might see that coming about.
And is that in the kind of imminent right now, how it might happen tomorrow, or can we go really far with this answer?
I'd love to hear both, but I know there's a limited amount of time, so whatever first comes to mind.
So if we go really far first, so as we've mentioned in the prediction, that one of the things you could see in the future is maybe kind of these levitating spaces where individual drops of the kind of single serve are actually served, so that someone has to physically move around the space and then really savor it. And what that also does is it takes out things like the taste of glass, so you've got that purest taste possible. So that's something that on the fringes we've been exploring as a studio. It's no way at the kind of place right now where you could go and do that fully. On a kind of more now-ish level, I mean, and if you want to jump in as well. Any thoughts on now?
I do have some now, but you go.
No, you go.
I was just going to add, I think, particularly with alcohol and with drinks, there's something about process and ritual that really sort of is dialed up opposed to food sometimes. The preparation of a cocktail, the different ingredients that go alongside the drink, for example, and there's something really nice in sort of witnessing and being part of that ritual and that savouring moment that goes beyond, even before the first sip, you've got those kind of stages. That was, yeah.
And also using external elements in the space to kind of really heighten and play on different elements of the flavour, the taste. So whether that be kind of sound, scent, all of that, to really kind of maximise and kind of bring that taste and savour moment to a crescendo.
There's a reason why people love the flavour blast, the kind of big, like balloons and smoke, because it adds that magic as well. So.
And then we've got time for maybe one more in the room and then online. Yeah?
Thank you, very fascinating. I've got a specific question. You mentioned about, eating food with your hands, licking stone, and they're all like fundamentals you will potentially do when you're a kid at the early age. And I wonder, we talked a lot about adults and experience and educating people. I wonder if there's a space as well to educate children from the very early on, so that they get into that space of discovery from the start to really expand their senses when they get older.
I'll take this one.
Yeah, I think the sense is in are sort of almost drilled out of children as something to focus on at a certain age, which is really sad. And I think that there are definitely things we could be doing to encourage more interplay and more kind of coaction between food and drink and the kind of play experience. I think that's when you start to really look at kind of the play element of introducing food and drink as a real moment that you need to focus on and, you know, a hyper focus on almost, because when you're an adult, then you have the distractions all the time. So I almost think we should learn a lot from children rather than sort of help teach them, because they've nailed it. They've got it there. I mean, going outside and touching grass is something that children do all the time. And I think, yeah, if anything, it's kind of just helping to, what can we learn from that and then relay back to children with an adult perspective, maybe?
And then 2 online.
I was going to be a champion for online. Lots and lots of the questions online are revolving around eating with your hands as well, which feels some of the way that this room is going too. So one of them in particular says, how would you combine strangescaping and safer mentality? And to broaden that out as well, I wonder if you could tell us what are your favourite predictions, the future that you want to step inside?
I mean, suck a napkin, for me, that's how you put it together. I think there's something really interesting kind of like savouring something that is almost not meant to be savoured, kind of edible napkins. I don't know what you think about that, and then we can go on to the...
For me, it's almost creating these spaces or worlds that you're walking into that completely break apart what we traditionally think of when we think of restaurants. So with strangescaping, that's the environment you're walking into. So it could actually be more akin to walking into a mind-blowing art installation. And then when it comes to the food and dinner itself, again, completely devoid of plates, cutlery, and you're almost asked to excavate it somehow and eat it with your hands. So you really get to savor it and have a completely different and intimate relationship and understanding of it. And Sam, you did ask a second question.
You want to step into with all your different predictions?
I mean, I really love the interplay between the kind of subjective, the social, and the quantum, and I really think there's something in the future of looking at ritual and memory and kind of taking a step inside to look outwards, which I think a lot of these trends talk to, but I do think I'm really excited for a sort of much more sort of subjective viewpoint to push out the future.
Can I cheat and say 2? Great. So the first, and actually it's really convenient that somebody online kind of mentioned the interplay between saver mentality of strangescaping, because that to me is really exciting. And this is probably something I'm going to regret saying, but I am someone that actually at home likes to eat with my fingers as much as possible. And then my flatmate also does, and it's a lovely thing. And there's just something so nice about it, but you can't do it kind of when you're out in public generally. So that to me is really exciting, and also this idea of these kind of mind-blowing worlds that you're going into. And then the second one, and this is by no means a kind of near future excitement, is just the potential possibilities that can be unlocked when we think of the world through that kind of more quantum lens. Nobody has any answers yet to what that is, but I just think that kind of infinite world of possibility that everyone can kind of collectively explore, to me is really exciting.
Thank you very, very much. So I do understand that we're able to do drinks outside for a little bit more. So please make sure you're speaking to your neighbours. Thank you, everyone online, for joining and asking such good questions. The observation, the chat is brilliant. Speak to everyone, have a drink. I think our team will be conferring about the best question as well, so we're thinking about that. But I wanted to wrap up by thanking everyone here for coming, and in particular, a massive round of applause for Pablo, for Ralph, for Carson. Thank you very, very much.
What we do? Oh, you can.